The second pinch pot assignment I have for you is to actually combine two pinch pots together. You can see the instructions on this handout, once again published in Canvas, but also available in the classroom as well. You can see the steps we're taking here to create two pinch pots and score and slip those together. And then there's the challenge of actually turning that combined pinch pot that you've made into a sphere form into some kind of an object. And what I'm going to do is show you how to make a pumpkin out of these today. So to start with, I have once again a baseball sized piece of clay, and this is the end product that we're kind of shooting for. This is a pumpkin form that just has a white glaze on the surface. I'm going to start with a baseball sized piece of clay once again, but this time I'm going to take my wire tool and just cut that in half, and I'm going to make two pinch pots out of these two halves. And eventually we will score and slip these two pinch pots together. So once again, I want to make my walls about 1/4 inch thick, if not just slightly thinner. Not too thin though, or they're hard to attach together. They start to collapse. So I've got pinch pot number 1, just about done. Now, as I hook these two together, and I'm going to just set this aside because I have a second pinch pot here all ready to go. When I hook these two together, I need to have a nice flat surface. I don't want to have big gaps in there like you see right there. So here again, I'm going to tap those on the table, flatten out those surfaces, and then I'm going to use my needle tool to score and slip around the edge. But I have it actually a little fancier tool. I made this as one of my home pottery making tools. It's just a Amazon gift card that I've cut a jagged edge into. But of course, you can use your needle tool as well. But this for me is just a little faster. So I'm going to score those surfaces up really quick. And then I'm going to add some slip to one of the halves. You know, you can't ever add too much slip. If you get a lot on there, it might get a little messy, but you can have too little. Sometimes we don't get quite enough on there and it doesn't quite stick together. Okay, now I'm just going to squeeze these two pieces together, making sure the lip is attached really well on both of those. It will get a little messy. That's okay. All right, the next tool I'm going to use is my metal scraper. This is a really nice tool for blending over seams. So we have that little seam right there. I'm going to use this to start blending across that seam. Still going to look a little rough, a little messy, but that's okay, that's normal. Get that nice and clean. Nice and blended, I should say. It's not going to be really clean just yet. I just want to blend that seam together. Now I'm going to clean it up a little bit just with my sponge. So here's my sponge. It's slightly damp, but I'm going to get a little more water on it. And now I'll use that to kind of smooth things out. And if you're making a pumpkin, it doesn't have to be completely smooth. So it all just depends on what you're making, because a pumpkin can have some uneven areas, some little bumps and things in it. So that's a good start anyway. Really, the purpose of this assignment is to learn how to make a hollow form. So that's kind of what we're getting into. And now I want to test your creativity to see what you can produce from this hollow form. All right, if I'm making a pumpkin, now what I'm going to do is use my wood knife to start to indent the pumpkin where the ribs of the pumpkin will be. In this case, I like to have about 5 different ribs coming down. And again, it can be really organic in its form. It can be a little bit uneven, just like an actual pumpkin. Okay, I've got my lines on there, but those lines look really mechanical, really too straight. So now what I'm going to do is just take my wood knife and open up those lines a little bit, just to make it look a little more organic. Spread that out, round off those edges. I'll do that on all 5 of them. Then it is looking a little rough, so I'm just going to put a little water on my finger and just blend those into it now. Just blend that seam. Make it nice and clean. You know, part of any grade and any assignment that you do in my class is the presentation of the piece. So everything should be nice and clean in its final state. So that's pretty clean. So, you know, there's bumps and ridges and things, but they're really quite smooth. And so that's what we're kind of shooting for. I can kind of see my seam just a little bit right there, so I'm going to blend over that a little. I don't want to see any kind of seams in there. Just keep blending those smooth. Okay, so you get the idea. I've got to do that all the way around, and really we're just about finished with our pumpkin. Last thing I'm going to do is add a stem. And a stem is really simple. I'm just going to start with a bit of a carrot-shaped coil so that it's smaller at one end and thicker at the other. And then I like to kind of square off my stems. So I'm just going to pinch it in kind of a square, almost a tall, skinny, pyramidal kind of a shape. And then I'm just going to twist it. That twisting of the stem gives it much more of a natural feel to it. It's a little long, so I'm going to get rid of that end. Just pinch it. There we go. And now, again, I need to score. And again, you can just use your needle tool. I've got this handy dandy tool here. Then I'm going to add some slip, and I'm going to apply some pressure. Make sure that sticks together really well. Then I'm going to clean up this slip, and again, if you have a little paintbrush in the classroom, I've got some paintbrushes we can use to help clean up those little areas. You can also try to use our sponge just a little bit as well. Again, presentation is an important part. Make sure it's nice and clean. I'm going to grab a paintbrush here. Got one right here. Get a little water on it. And I'm going to clean up those areas that are kind of tight for my finger. Okay. So that side's looking pretty good. I still need to work on this side over here, you know, but that looks pretty good there. Now, when you have a hollow form like this, and you put it in a kiln, gases are going to build up inside of that hollow form while it's firing, and those gases will expand, and eventually it's going to crack where my seam was. So to prevent that, what I'm going to do is just take my needle tool, and I'm going to poke a hole in the bottom. Maybe make it a little bit bigger, just something like that. And that will allow those gases to escape, and I won't have a problem with it. Then I'm going to put my initials on there, an MH. And then I'm going to have you write your class period on there as well. So whether you're in first hour or second hour, third, fourth, fifth, whatever it might be. That way we know just exactly who that belongs to. Okay, that is ready to set out on the shelf and start to dry so we can get them bisque fired.